Good morning, seventh graders. Today we are going to be reading a very famous narrative poem called The Highwayman. But before we get into that, I want you to spend a little time with your independent reading book. So get comfy, get cozy, and enjoy your own independent reading book. I'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. Welcome back. What you need to have out today is a piece of paper and something to write with, along with obviously your Chromebook. So those are the things you need to have out. Today we're going to be using some pre-reading strategies and a new strategy called the visualization strategy. And you're going to be doing a little bit of drawing today. Your job is going to be to pay attention to some literary devices that your author is going to be using, some things like metaphors and similes, onomatopoeias, alliterations, and even repetition. So today we're going to get into a poem called The Highwayman. So this is a really famous poem and probably, definitely a favorite by most seventh graders. And it's a little dark, it's a little romantic. So let's take a look at who wrote it and when it all came about. So let's continue on. So take a look. It was written a long time ago by this guy named Alfred Noyes. He was born in England and he was both a poet and a critic. He wrote frequently about the English countryside and legends. He loved legends. And look at this English countryside here. This is called the moors. And despite his great love for England's history, he actually moved to New Jersey to teach at Princeton University. And even though he was here and teaching at Princeton, he still kept writing about English history, and especially legendary figures like Robin Hood. Now, some people know who Robin Hood, the legend of Robin Hood is, and some people don't. There's about 1 million different versions. But if you look right here, there's this one's one of the movies that was made of Robin Hood. Robin Hood was well known for robbing the rich and giving to the poor. And he would kind of hide out, and as people would come down the path on their horses, he would rob them and take their money. Well, our story called The Highwayman is also about a Robin Hood type figure. So these highwaymen, you're seeing a picture right here, would rob people as they came by and take their money. And so our story is about a highwayman, and this is kind of typical of what you would see with a highwayman at that time frame that we're dealing with here. All right, well, our story takes place in what's called the English moors, and take a look at how it's just this opened land, and there's you can see some stone here and different plants and the beautiful colors, but it's pretty wide open, and there's like nothing really around, some rolling hills and land. So that's what you've got to keep in mind when we talk about the moors in our story. All right, well, let's get our paper set up for what we're going to be doing today. So here's what I need you to do right now. You're going to need to take out that sheet of paper if you haven't already gotten it out, and I need you to fold it in half. And I need you to label it just like you're seeing right there. So at the top, you fold it in half, the hot dog style. And on one side, you're going to write sketch and description. And on the other side, you're going to write realization. What does it help me understand? All right, so set your paper up like this. Teachers, go ahead and pause so that students get a chance to set their papers up. All right, hopefully you've had a chance to get your papers set up. You can see mine. You want to make sure that you've got room. You're going to be doing like 3 different drawings today. And if you have to go on the back side, that's totally fine. Or if you need another piece of paper, that's totally fine. Notice that it says a sketch or a description. So it's not going to be this magnificent work of art. It's going to be a quick sketch that we'll be doing while we're reading. And it's going to help us to really visualize what's going on and help us understand our characters and our setting at a deeper level. All right, right now, I want you to go into Google Classroom. And when you get into Google Classroom, I want you to find the Highwayman post under classwork. And you're going to need to open up the Highwayman story, the document. So go ahead and find that, open it up. It looks like this. So go ahead, teachers, give students a minute to make sure that they have that open along with their paper so that they're ready to take some notes. These are the only things you're going to need open for today. All right, you should have this document open, and let's take a look at it. This is the Highwayman, and we actually copied this out of our textbook so that you guys could see it. Take a look right now at this picture, this image. So looking at it right now, take just a couple of minutes and share out in your crew, what do you see in this picture? And then go to the second page. What do you see in this picture? So what are some things you notice in those two pictures? So just take like maybe 2 minutes, share out, what do you think you see in those pictures? All right, people probably have said that they saw a horse, that they saw a rider in a cape. And some people might even say they noticed a spur on a boot. And some other people are going to say they noticed the moon and some trees and a house with a figure in the window. And what you're noticing is that this image, it's very dark. It's very distorted. And why do you think they would make it really dark and distorted? Why do you think it would look like this? What would be the reason to have this as our first image as we start to read this poem? Maybe share out one or two answers. All right. So some of you hopefully came up with some responses that include that it's mysterious. It's a little dark. It's setting the tone or the mood as being a moonlit night and in a wooded area, and it's dark, and we have this mysterious rider, and so you don't really know what's all going to happen. And so if you talked about a little bit of that, you are absolutely correct. All right, as we continue to get ready to read, I want you to notice that this is a narrative poem. So that means we're talking about stanzas again. We're not going to have paragraphs. Instead of paragraphs, we have stanzas. So you'll notice these sections. You're also going to notice down below these footnotes. You'll notice it 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of language in here that you might not be familiar with. This was written a long time ago. And so it's going to be important that we look at what these meanings are at the bottoms of the page as you encounter them. So when I see this little number 3 right here, I know to come down here and figure out what number 3 means. So we're going to take a quick look at understanding what those mean as we go along. It's always helpful to read them ahead of time. All right, so let's get started and talk about our poem here. So this is a story. It is a narrative poem, and so this is going to go in chronological order. It's going to start at the beginning of the story and go all the way through. And you'll notice, again, these short stanzas on each page. You're going to notice that the different areas are numbered. And so as you go through, just kind of taking a look, there are two parts to the poem, part 1 and then part 2. And we're just kind of skimming and scanning as you go through and notice and see where the poem ends. So your job right now is going to be to follow along as I read. We are going to pause and do some sketching along the way. So here we go. Let's get started on part 1. And this helps us to set the mood or the tone of our poem by looking at the image. So here we go. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon the cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up to the olden door. So you can picture this torrent of darkness. So it's dark, and the moon is a ghostly galleon. And if you look down here, a galleon is a large Spanish ship, and so they've made that metaphor for the moon. And then the road is a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moors. Remember the moors that we saw? And a highwayman, remember those are those robbers, came riding up to the old inn door. So we're talking about this old inn where people would come and stay. He'd a French cocked hat on his forehead and a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of claret velvet and breeches of brown doe skin. They fitted with never a wrinkle, his boots were up to the thigh, and he rode with a jeweled twinkle, his pistol butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle under the jeweled sky. So that's what he looks like, a French cocked hat. And he's got this coat of claret velvet. And if you look down here for his breeches, those are those trousers, his pants. And then if you look, he's got a pistol and it says a rapier hilt. So you know you can see the cup end of the sword. So right now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to sketch the Highwayman on your paper. So right here, I want you to just take a second and I want you to sketch him. So right where it says sketch, just do a little, backwards, do a little sketch right here. All right, teachers pause. Students sketch him. Sketch him with his hat. Sketch him on his horse. Sketch him with his fancy clothes on. Sketch him with his weapons. All right, so just take a minute and sketch. Okay, I cheated. I copied my image right here. So here's a sketch what yours might look like. And you can see he's got this French cocked hat on his forehead. The lace is the part of the fanciness of his shirt. He's got his pistol. So you can take a look at this Highwayman, all right? So you should have a sketch. Now, yours doesn't have to be a perfect work of art like this. It could be just a quick sketch. It might even be kind of humorous. Maybe you did a little stick person with his hat and his sword, and he's on his little stick horse. But just a quick sketch. Now that we're looking at him, what does it help you to understand? So we're looking over here in this realization. As I look at this Highwayman, what does it help me to understand about him? Well, right away, I look at him and I'm like, okay, he's obviously rich. Look at how well he's dressed. He's also carrying a gun and a sword, which makes me figure out he's pretty dangerous. And because he's dressed so fancy, he's a very dashing figure. So right now we're going to fill some of that in on what does it help you to realize. So let's write those in next to your sketch under realization. That by looking at him, you can tell he's kind of dangerous. You can tell that he's rich. He's a handsome or dashing man. He's very mysterious. And he's confident, and it's obvious that he takes very good care of himself. So you should be adding those things right now underneath where it has the realization. So go ahead and write that underneath your realization. Teachers pause if students need a second to add that in. And then we're going to keep going, and you'll have another sketch to do of another character. Okay, so we've met the Highwayman. He's on his horse. He's riding up to this old inn door, and it's nighttime, and the wind is through the trees, but the moon is out, and there's some clouds, and he's coming to this inn. So watch as he approaches this inn. Over the cobbles he clattered and clashed in the dark innyard. He tapped with his whip on the shutters, but all was locked and barred. He whistled a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess, the landlord's daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. So now he rides up to this inn, and he's got his whip, and it's not like an Indiana Jones whip. It's like what you would use when you're riding a horse, and he knocks on the shutters. And it's all locked up and quiet. And then he whistles this little tune, and all of a sudden, here's Bess. And she's plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. And if you look down here, you'll see a number 5. And you come down here, she's braiding that in. So she's braiding this love knot. So obviously, they have a relationship. So here they are, and let's see, we're about to meet our next character that you are going to have to sketch. And in the dark old innyard, a stable wicket creaked, where Tim, the ostler, listened. His face was white and peaked. All right, I'll pick that one back up again. Where Tim, the ostler, listened, his face was white and peaked. His eyes were hollows of madness, his hair like moldy hay. But he loved the landlord's daughter, the landlord's red-lipped daughter. Dumb as a dog he listened, and he heard the robbers say. Let's pause right there. Let's look at Tim. Tim is an ostler, and if you look at the number 7, you look down below to find out what he is. An ostler is a person who takes care of horses at an inn or a stable. So Tim is the stable guy, and he's listening. So, and now we see what he looks like. He's got this white face and these eyes that are hollows of madness, and his hair is like moldy hay. And he's just sitting there eavesdropping. Right now, I want you to sketch Tim. So sketch Tim. He's your next one. Sketch him a second. All right, go ahead and pause. What does he look like? All right, so you sketch Tim the Ostler. And there's my Tim. And what it helps me to realize when I look at Tim, he's not like the Highwayman. He's poor. And he's not confident at all. He's like lurking in the shadows, eavesdropping, being really sneaky and nosy. And it says he loves the landlord's daughter. So you can get that feeling of the jealousy with those madness eyes. His eyes are hollows of madness. So right now, update your Tim on your drawing. Okay, we've met the Highwayman. He's rode up to the old inn door. He's knocked on the shutters. And Bess has opened those shutters, and she's got her love knot in there, so you know that they've got a romantic relationship. And Tim, he's listening in on what they're talking about. So listen as the Highwayman talks right here. It says, Tim is dumb as a dog. He listened, and he heard the robber say, remember the Highwayman, he's the robber, one kiss, my bonny sweetheart, I'm after a prize tonight, but I shall be back with the yellow gold before the morning light. Yet if they press me sharply and harry me through the day, then look for me by the moonlight, watch for me by the moonlight, I'll come to thee by the moonlight, though hell should bar the way. So right here, the Highwayman just is going to give Bess a kiss goodbye, and off he's going to get that yellow gold. And he tells her right there that they might press him sharply and harry him through the day. And if you look down here, harry means to have this constant attack. So if they're looking for him, he says, then watch for me at night, that he will come to her at nighttime, and nothing is going to keep him from coming back to her. He rose upright in the stirrups. He scarce could reach her hand, because she's up in the window. He can barely reach her hand as he's on his horse. She loosened her hair in the casement. His face burnt like a brand, as the black cascade of perfume came tumbling over his breast, and he kissed its waves in the moonlight. Oh, sweet black waves in the moonlight. Then he tugged at his rein in the moonlight and galloped away to the west. So right here, Bess loosens her hair in the casement. If you look at 10, casement is a window. So she lets her hair out of the window, because remember, he can't reach her. And her hair comes down, and because he can't reach up to her, he kisses her hair, and off he goes to go and get that gold. So that ends part 1 of our story. We've got our Highwayman off to rob somebody and get his gold. We've got Bess, who's in love with the Highwayman. And we've got Tim, who's jealous and loves Bess. But Bess, she doesn't even know he exists. All right, let's go on to part 2 of the poem. He did not come in the dawning. He did not come at noon. And out of the tawny sunset, before the rise of the moon, when the road was a gypsy's ribbon, looping the purple moor, a redcoat troop came marching, marching, marching. King George's men came marching up to the old inn door. So this is interesting. The Highwayman didn't come during the morning. He didn't come at noon, which means they're probably looking for him. And if you remember what he said, he will come in the evening. But now somebody else has shown up at the inn, King George's men. And if you look down here, these are the soldiers that are serving King George, and they're coming up to the old inn door. Let's see what happens when they show up at the inn. They said no word to the landlord. They drank his ale instead. But they gagged his daughter and bound her to the foot of her narrow bed. 2 of them knelt at her casement, remember that's a window, with muskets at her side, and there was death at every window. and hell at one dark window, for Bess could see through her casement the road that he would ride. They tied her up with attention, with many a sniggering jest, and they bound a musket beside her with the muzzle beneath her breast. Now, keep good watch. And they kissed her, she heard the doomed men say. Look for me by the moonlight. Watch for me by the moonlight. I'll come to thee by the moonlight, though hell should bar the way. All right, look what just happened here. These men showed up. They drank all the landlord's ale. They didn't say anything to him. They got Bess. They gagged her and they tied her up at the foot of her bed. And they pointed a gun at her and tied her up so that she's looking out the window that the highwayman would come towards her. Right now, thinking of these men, King George's men, I want you to do a sketch of this scene. What are you seeing in this scene? And then we're going to talk about what that helps you to understand about King George's men. So right now, let's do a quick sketch. If you've run out of room, you can flip your paper over, but right now do a sketch of the redcoats. Sketch them or sketch what they're doing, all right? And then take a few minutes to write down, what does it help you realize about those redcoats? What does it help you understand about what kind of guys are these redcoats? Okay, tell me about their personality just by what they do and what they say. Teachers, go ahead and pause, give students a chance to sketch and share out a few responses. I'll see you back in a minute. All right, you probably have something sketched. Obviously, I didn't sketch this. I'm not that gifted, but this is Bess. She's tied up and you can see the gun is pointing at her. She's gagged and she's looking out the window to watch the road in which the highwayman would come. So you see these redcoats, they show up and they do whatever they want. It shows that they believe themselves, and they are, above the law. They're cruel, and they're dangerous, and they're selfish. And so this helps me to see what these guys are like. The author doesn't come out and say it, but he shows it right here in their actions. So now Bess is waiting for the highwayman to come back, and there is a kind of a crazy turn of events. If you look at the storyline, what these redcoats say, and you'll see it right here, it's in italics even. They say, look for me by the moonlight, watch for me by the moonlight. And if you remember back to the beginning of the story, the highwayman said that to Bess. And it was just the two of them, or so she thought. Who else heard the highwayman say this? All of a sudden, you should be getting that light bulb coming on and going, oh, Tim is a snitch. And why would Tim do that? Because he's jealous. Tim would be the only one who could have told that the highwayman was there and that he's coming back. Let's see what happens now as she's tied up, looking out the window towards the road that he would ride. And the house is full of redcoats. She twisted her hands behind her, but all the knots held good. She writhed her hands till her fingers were wet with sweat or blood. They stretched and strained in the darkness, and the hours crawled by like years. Till now, on the stroke of midnight, cold on the stroke of midnight, the tip of one finger touched it. The trigger, at least, was hers. The tip of one finger touched it. She strove no more for the rest. Up. She stood up to attention with the muzzle beneath her breast. She would not risk their hearing. She would not strive again. For the road lay bare in the moonlight, blank and bare in the moonlight, and the blood of her veins in the moonlight throbbed to her love's refrain. Talat, talat, talat. Had they heard it? The horse hoofs ringing clear. Talat, 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 talat. In the distance, were they deaf that they did not hear? Down the ribbon of moonlight, over the brow of the hill, The highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The redcoats looked to their priming. She stood up straight and still. So here comes the highwayman. He's getting closer and closer, and the redcoats now know that he's coming, and they're looking to their priming. If you look at 14, down here, priming is that explosive that they use in those old guns, those old muskets. So they're getting ready to shoot him down while she watches. Talat, talat, in the frosty silence. Talat, talat, in the echoing night. Nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like a light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Then her finger moved in the moonlight. Her musket shattered the moonlight, shattered her breast in the moonlight, and warned him with her death. He turned. He spurred to the west. He did not know who stood, bowed with her head o'er the musket, drenched with her own blood. Not till the dawn he heard it, and his face grew gray to hear how Bess, the landlord's daughter, the landlord's black-eyed daughter, had watched for her love in the moonlight and died in darkness there. So right now, take a minute in your crew and talk about what just happened with Bess. What did she do? And why did she do it? So pause and have a quick chat. All right. Hopefully you guys talked about the fact that she shot herself because she wanted to warn him because he was going to get killed. They were going to shoot and kill him right in front of her. And she sacrificed herself for him because she loved him and she didn't want to see him die. And he had no idea. He heard the gunshot and just turned around and took off knowing that there was danger. And the next day, he learns about her death. So now watch what he does. Back, he spurred like a madman, shouting a curse to the sky, with the white road smoking behind him and his rapier brandished high. Blood red were his spurs in the golden noon. Wine red was his velvet coat when they shot him down on the highway, down like a dog on the highway. And he lay in his blood on the highway with a bunch of lace at his throat. So the highwayman hears about it, and he's enraged and he's mourning, and he gets on his horse and he races back towards the end, and he puts his sword in the air and he yells curses, and he gets shot down and dies. Do you think he did that intentionally? Talk about that in your crew. Why would the highwayman go back knowing that this house is full of redcoats and holding his sword and yelling? Hopefully you had a good discussion. Now let's look at the end of this legend. As you scroll down, I want you to notice the shift in font. It's going into italics. All right, so now we have both Bess and the highwayman have died. And Tim, your plan didn't work out so well. So let's take a look at the ending here in italics, and let's see if you get what happens now. And still of a winter's night, they say, when the wind is in the trees, when the moon is a ghostly galleon tossed upon the cloudy seas, when the road is a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, a highwayman comes riding, riding, riding. A highwayman comes riding up to the olden door. Over the cobbles he clatters and clangs in the dark innyard. He taps with his whip on the shutters, but all is locked and barred. He whistles a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter, Bess, the landlord's daughter, plaiting a dark red love knot into her long black hair. Did you get it? What happens at the end? Share out a couple theories in your class, in your crew, and then I'll tell you what happens at the end. Okay, if you notice, it says, and still of a winter's night, they say that Now, legend has it, they are still together as ghosts. Their love has eternalized them together as ghosts. So this legend says on those winter's nights, when the moon is a ghostly galleon, when when the road is a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, that the highwayman comes back to Bess and they meet up. So they're together still as ghosts. All right. I hope you enjoyed The Highwayman. Tomorrow, you're going to do some work with this story. If you need to reread it again, it's a great legend. It's a great story. See you tomorrow. Bye.